Hello and welcome to the Super Nicktendo Unscripted podcast. We are on episode number 4, so we definitely cruising here every week. Have a fresh new podcast for you guys. This has been a lot of fun making it. It helps definitely to get some topics that have been bouncing around in my brain out into the open, so I can work on my main channel. Just to a little housekeeping on that. The next video hopefully will be out by the end of this week. It's just been kind of hectic around here to make sure that everything is all right. But you know what? I took a lot of time to make the B-roll, and I definitely think that this video is going to be, I'm going to like this video. So hopefully, fingers crossed, everybody likes it as well. So I got a handful of topics today, 3 topics to go over. We'll first start out with the pickups of the week. Last week, I said that I picked up an Intellivision with the system switcher, and I wasn't really sure if it worked or not, but hey, it does. It's just that I still haven't gotten a game to work yet on it, and like I've mentioned before, like these Intellivision 2s are very fickle, and I just, every time, like I have like issues with it. So I did get a splash screen that shows up when you don't put it in a cartridge. So I definitely know that the system works. So it's a matter of time. Maybe it just needs like a brutal deep down cleaning and stuff. So I'll keep you updated as I go along with that. But the other thing, it was kind of surprised. I wasn't really on the eye to look at. I got another PVM. I got a Sony 13-inch from, it was made in the 90s. It's not the super fine pitch, so it doesn't have as many TVL lines as the other one that I have. I think the other one that I have has 600. This one has 450, but for a 13-inch, 450 lines, it still looks pretty sharp. It's got the RGB out and everything, and I only paid $100 for it. It popped up on Facebook Marketplace. I looked at it and I was like, you know what? For $100 for an extra monitor, like especially if I just use it as like a Tate or a Tate or whatever the heck people pronounce it, I don't even know anymore. But I might use it for that, for the Mister and stuff. But it's a matter of finding room for it. So we'll have to go through there and figure it out. But yeah, that's pretty much the only things that I picked up this week. So that's about it. So we'll go ahead and just jump right in to the topics of this week's podcast. We're going to talk about the Nintendo Direct. The Nintendo Direct, you guys, we finally got one. And actually, it was pretty good. You got a decent amount of games to look forward to. I'll go over some of the ones that I thought were pretty cool. Like, you got Pikmin 4, which releases in July, and after the second one, I wasn't any good on it, so I don't know if I'm going to pick it up or not, but it looks good. I'll have to maybe get into the swing of things and try to get 2. Like, I played the first one. The first one was okay, but then, like, the second one brought in, like, a whole bunch of different, like, split mechanics that you had to, like, manage, and it's just, like, I'm not that great at real-time strategy games like that, so I mean, it still looks cute, and if it ever goes on sale, like, maybe I'll go for it. Then you got Dead Cells Castlevania. So this one I'll have to look into, because I don't think that it's an actual, like, Castlevania, like, in the form of Dead Cells. I think it's just kind of like a tribute. So we'll have to see what that is. I might actually be down for that. Then we have Ghost Trick, which is pretty cool. It's not going to be physical, so unfortunately, like, if you were waiting for that 3DS one to drop down, I wouldn't hold your breath. Like, I guess you can import it from Japan, and it does play into English, so that's good. But as far as it goes right now, we don't have a physical release for Ghost Trick. But it is really nice to see. There was a handful of other Atlas games too that were DS only that got ported, so that's really good to see that developers are still kind of like recognizing that the DS has games that are worth like converting back into non dual screen games. So that's good to hear. You got Bayonetta Origins. It looks fun, but I don't really know. The Illusion Island Mickey Mouse platformer looks like a Rayman spiritual successor, but like the sprites just look too rinky dinky, which was kind of an issue with 4 player Rayman too. Like the camera zoomed out so much that kind of lost it. Then you got Game Boy games on the Nintendo Switch online service. You got Tetris, Mario Land 2, Link's Awakening DX. You got some really good bangers for right out of the gate. I know that like you, some people might not like the Game Boy games, but if you grew up with them and like even on the big screen, they're not that bad. Like I like how people like they kind of rag on the Game Boy like it's like this primitive technology, like you're forcing your kid to like use a rotary phone or something like that. Like the Game Boy still has some like really good bangers, and like same thing with the Game Boy Advance. Like that's kind of the thing is like handhelds have for the longest time just been regarded as like the lesser end. Like you know everybody treats the Game Boy and all these other handhelds like they were Tiger Electronic handhelds. Like they're just so primitive, and it's like yeah, sure, Mortal Kombat and wasn't the best on the Game Boy. Okay, yeah, all right, fine, but for the most part, like a lot of games, they did pretty good to work with what they have, and some of those games are just like underappreciated even to this day. So that's one thing that I've been getting into is like my older collection and stuff. I'm going back to like handhelds and finding that wow, like some of these handheld games are really good. Because like I missed out on a lot of handheld stuff when I was younger. Like as soon as like the Game Boy Color came out and like Pokemon came out, that's when I stopped playing Game Boy games, just because like I just never got any of them after that. So like I pretty much I didn't get another Game Boy until the Game Boy Advance, and so like I've definitely missed out on a lot of Game Boy games from that generation. So it's like you're when you're going back and you're finding like these games, it's like a whole new a whole new generation of games that you were old enough to like appreciate back when they were new, but like you miss them and stuff. So it's kind of like a whole just relearning games that you might have been interested in back and then. So give Game Boy a try. Then you have that Konami baseball game. It's 99 cents, and I tried it, and man, I really want to like it, but like I have to like get into the actual baseball groove. I like when I saw the trailer, I thought that it was going to be something like an old school Nintendo baseball game where it's just like you press A to swing and thing, but it's like you have to like make sure that um your batter is you have to like align your bat with with the pitch, and also like the controls are kind of weird because it's like when you catch the ball, like you have to press X to throw it to second base and A to throw it to first, and Y to throw it to second and B to home. Like it takes some to getting used to, but for 99 cents, like I didn't even pay for it. Like I paid for it with my little platinum coins. So let me know what you guys think about it, but I still have to like get myself into the groove to play that. All right, so I skipped over 2 of them here. So Metroid Prime Remastered. So you have all these people who have been like predicting, quote unquote, the Metroid Prime trilogy remastered, like that it was going to be a 3-pack, and they're coming from that, but they went and they made Metroid Prime, the first one, remastered, and it looks really good. Like it's apparently they used the source code and made it so that way it runs well on the Switch too. Like it's a very good port, which is something that like it's unfortunate that that's surprising, because like so many other remasters are so lazy. Like you had the Grand Theft Auto trilogy, definitive edition, like that was poorly made. Every time like you see like these HD remasters going back, like there's always like something that's like critically wrong, and it's like, why can't you just hit the beats that everybody wants? And they did it. So I hope that this kind of like sets a precedent going forward, because we deserve, you know if you're gonna charge $40 for a game, like it better be good. Like like I don't know how much more I would spend on it. Like $40 is a pretty good deal. The only thing is that the door isn't. They're different, which take it or leave it. But I do think that people complaining about the door is a sign that like nothing really else is wrong with the game. There's no like horrible pop in. There's no like frame drops or anything like that, or they didn't they didn't add voice acting to the cutscenes or anything like that. They left it pretty much the same, so that the whole atmosphere is the thing. So I guess like if the doors are the only thing that's wrong with it, then that's pretty good. Now let's talk about the Tears of the Kingdom. Tears of the Kingdom, the next Zelda game. People are kind of mixed, like it's kind of crazy. Like, so everybody's saying that it's like, well, it's going to be too close to Breath of the Wild. And at first glance you're like, well, Metroid not Metroid Prime, Majora's Mask was, reused the assets of Ocarina of Time, but when you actually like listen to that a little bit closely, it's people are afraid that the map is going to be too exact, and that's a good point. We don't know what the map looks like. We don't, there's new mechanics. Like I guess you can build all this like other crazy stuff, and fly around, and I don't know how I'm gonna like that. Like I hope that it's not something that's like required, and I hope that it's something that like only people who want to have fun with it can have fun with that. So that's all I'm gonna do for that. But the problem is, that's the main controversy. The game is gonna be $70, and $70, for the longest time games have been $60, $59.99 for the longest time. And I know that a lot of people, they're sharing those Toys R Us and Funko Land ads and stuff where they're like $70 or whatever. But games, like, I have yet to see a Walmart or a Best Buy or a Target ad where that's the case. Toys R Us has always been on the more expensive side. Amiibos, when they first came out, like everybody else had them for like, I think they were $12 or something like that, and then like Toys R Us always had them for like 15. Like, so you always had to pay like a higher amount if you were gonna go to like a boutique Toys R Us or KB Toys or something like that, because I don't remember ever spending more than $60 for a Super Nintendo game at all, or even like a Nintendo 64 game. And like I actually found a Best Buy ad where Majora's Mask was $60. So I get it that people keep trying to put that like, oh, remember when Street Fighter 2 was like an $80 cart? It's like, yeah, that was the MSRP, but most stores, like, they always let it go for cheaper, or they just didn't sell it. So like I guess like I don't doubt that people did pay that amount, but like to suggest that like it's some kind of like Mandela effect where it's like everybody remembers games being $60, and then suddenly going back and being like, see, it's the only reason why you don't understand that is because your parents bought it for me. It's like, nah, I bought I bought Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time both with my own money, and they were not $70. They were 60. So, I try to look for ads because I just I thought it was interesting because yeah, I acknowledge that the prices were kind of whack back then, but it's like nobody actually like not everybody paid those prices. But again, so $70 for a Zelda game. I managed to find it for 60 from GameStop, so I pre-ordered that. I kind of really wish that I had jumped on it when Wario 64 had mentioned like when Best Buy had it, because like I like buying for Best Buy better. The way that GameStop ships out their pre-orders now, it's like you will be lucky to get it on launch day. Like they don't ship on launch. So if they do, then yeah, cool. But like I don't know, like it's Nintendo knew what they were doing. Like everybody's complaining about the $70 thing, but you're gonna buy the game. Like, what are you gonna do? Like, wait for it to go up on sale? Like, they don't go up on sale. Like Nintendo knows their fan base and stuff. Like, and especially with that collector's edition. Like that collector's edition, at first I was like, oh, that looks cool, and then like it's just a steelbook and some pins for like and an art book for $130. Like, really? Like that's really what people should be upset about. Like, I think people are upset that they can't buy it, and it's like, well, it kind of proves your point too. Like, you're willing to, like, if they wrap it up into a collector's edition, you sell it for $130. Like, people are just like, oh, I gotta get it, and it sells out like instantaneously because Nintendo is stupid like that, and like now everybody's upset that they can't buy it. But like, I missed out on it, and I was like, you know what, I don't need it. Like, it's not worth the extra $50 that you're paying on top of that. Like, if it had like a cool statue, because like I think the master edition was like $130 back when that first came out for the Breath of the Wild, and I got that, and like that was worth every penny. But like, this one doesn't even come with like any kind of trinkets or anything. It's just an art book and stuff. It's like I've seen the art book for Metroid Dread like when I paid $100 for it, and even then I was like, oh, I probably should have skipped that. All right, so moving on to my next topic here, we got the Atari XP. So they recently came out and they offered that they came out with like this 50th anniversary version of these Atari games. Like, they're collector's editions of Atari games where each one of them had like, it was like a limited edition, right? Where every month or something like that, two games would come on sale, and each one of them was like $100. So, and they sold 10 of them, so a total of it would be $1,000. And it looks like it finally sold out, but they limited it to 100 units, which it's like, okay, I guess. But the thing about that though is that it's such a ridiculous amount to ask. Like, it's kind of like just really just weird when they go on about these games, because like these games are well available everywhere else. It's like, I'm not gonna spend $100 for Adventure. Like, and plus like it's like, are you gonna open it up? Like, are you gonna display the cartridge? Like, it just doesn't seem like a good use of money. So like I had bought like the three first Atari XP games, the Aqua Venture and Saboteur and Yar's Return. I bought those specifically because like those are games that were originally supposed to be for the Atari 2600 and then never were physical for the Atari 2600. Like, they went back and they reprinted them. And so I thought that was like worth it, for the physical copies of those. But then like I had hoped that they would continue with that like hidden gem type thing with the Atari XP program. And like if you go to AtariXP.com, it just redirects you to Atari.com. That kind of indicates too that they're not necessarily going to continue with the program in the future. Because like when they followed it up with this Atari 50 thing, it's like, really, like you couldn't have, like, what about Jaguar games? Like it would be really nice to have like a reprint of some of the more expensive Jaguar games, or Atari Lynx games that Atari still has access to. Just like certain, I don't even know how easy it would be to make like Atari carts. But like I get a handful of homebrews, so like why not do something like that? So I don't really know what it's gonna meet with this Atari thing. Like if you go and like look, they sell like some weird stuff. Like they apparently like had a collaboration with Misfit, and they did a hoodie. It's $300, and it has Swarovski like gems in it. Like it's just the most ridiculous thing. It's like it's embellished with 500 Swarovski crystals, and it's a $300 hoodie, and it was like only limited to like 25 of them. $300, and it's sold out right now. I saw that and I was like, that's ridiculous. Like I got the watch and the poster, and like they missed the poster. Like they never sent me the poster, and so that's lost to time. Like the warehouse guy keeps saying like, oh, we're still looking for it, and I was like, okay. I haven't really gotten anything about that, but I don't know. I just really wish that Atari would be a little bit more focused when it comes to putting effort into these cartridges and stuff like that. Like it would have been great to see older, like even like Atari 5200 or 7600 or 7800 games, the Atari ST, certain computer games too. Like there's a whole different way that you can go with it, that I think would have made a lot more sense rather than coming out of the gate with, $100 versions of games that most Atari collectors probably already own. Again, like fingers crossed, but I'm not really like just the way that Atari has been like acting. Like I'm not really holding my breath on that. Okay, so the final topic, or maybe most likely the final product, Pat Contri addresses Brett Weiss's rebuttal here. So, all right. So first things first, I really want, like I said it in my last episode, but not too many people saw the episode. I look at things pretty pragmatically when it comes to certain things like this. I just want to like make that clear again that I've never met Brett or Pat. Like I've been in the same vicinity of Brett, but I never formally introduced myself. But I don't really have like a horse in my game, so like I'm just like giving my perspective on this. So like if you are a Pat fan, or a Brett hater or Pat hater or something like that, it looks to be more like there's more people who are on Brett's side most likely just don't like Pat for some reason. Well, there's a lot of reasons, but I just kind of want to like clarify that like I'm being a little bit pragmatic for you, and like your stance on like whether or not you like a certain person kind of influences the decision on like whether or not that person is telling the truth, and I don't like to view it that way. So if you guys could keep an open mind here, it looks like most of you guys have been pretty respectful in the comments and stuff, so that's pretty cool. So going on, like I listened to it, it was a long episode, but basically Pat didn't double down on removing the reviews for fraud, which is kind of interesting. Like you would think that if like the reviews were really that bad, that Pat would have doubled down on it and like showed examples of like why he thought that they were bad. So I think that kind of like goes back to the episode that I did 2 weeks ago where I didn't really think that that was the case, because like if they were like atrocious reviews, like they would have caught, like Pat would have caught them, because he is the NES punk. Like he should know these games inside and out and stuff. And like if he thinks that like a spot check on whether or not like one or two reviews would have gone through, if they were like that bad, like I'm pretty sure that they would take pause and did like a full audit on all 60 of them. It just doesn't make sense that like the game got the book got two prints before Brett's reviews were fully removed. So they couldn't have been that bad. But most of the video was just Pat gathering like character witnesses about like how bad Brett is. Like the one thing with the author sharing the experience about contributing to Brett's book, I don't understand like how you could like ask somebody to do a whole bunch of work for free and then just not like even hook them up with like just one book at the very least. Like that's, I mean, if that allegation is true, then that's pretty shady. That's all the better reason to pay your writers regardless of whether or not you think that they should be contributing for free or not. It really like drops down like the whole animosity that could boil up. And like it also, like I kind of mentioned before, it's like when you pay your writers and everything, like you can assure that they'll probably want to come back for the next book. So that way you can kind of have like a better, a more cohesive writing style across all three books, or to that degree. It also keeps the timeline and the quality up, because then way you can be like, well, we are paying you, and you kind of have to stick to a schedule and stuff. You can't just like get around to it. So that's one thing that I do agree with. Brett should have paid his writers, but a lot of this stuff is just more animosity and like negative experience with Brett. Like, the interactions that they have at cons where apparently Brett is going around with just his book in his hand being like, hey, you want to buy a book? Like, again, like I don't know if that's the way that it went down. Like, Pat is his own hero in his stories and stuff. So it's you got to take that with a grain of salt. But the other thing though is like, Pat was like really upset with Brett's relationship with Tommy and Smash JT, and like Tommy like still has a quote on the omnibus book on Amazon. So that's kind of funny. I can understand that, like if you're, like, but that's not the real, like, I don't think that that's the real reason why, like, Pat removed those things. Like, I really do think that, based off of like what Pat said, like in the very first thing, he's like, Brett was asking me where he got the information for his book, like the artwork and like other things, that Pat had used on the thing. So like I would be, if somebody did that to me, like if I was, creating like a Retronomics episode, and I'm working on somebody and somebody was like, hey, like how do you do these episodes? Like how do you put them together? Like how do you make all this stuff? Like one, I wouldn't tell anybody how that's made. Like that's my specific formula. But like, if somebody like just did that, like found out like how the episodes were made and how they were deconstructed and how they were put together, and then went and made their own like Retronomics like adjacent series, like right after they worked with me, like I'd be pretty upset. Like, so like I know a lot of people are like saying, well, because the Super Nintendo book of Brett's came out before Pat's Super Nintendo book, And also, like, I guess like Pat didn't really indicate whether or not he was excited, like looking forward to making a new book in the future. Like, there's like a video that somebody had linked to me that, just Pat went over the challenges that it came to putting together the NES book, and he kind of alluded to that he probably wasn't going to make a Super Nintendo one, but here we are. We made one, and he's making a Nintendo 64 one as well. But like, just because like, I think that makes it even more egregious that Brett came out with the Super Nintendo Omnibus after, like that was his first one, and that then he went back and did the NES one. Like, so I think that kind of is something that like Pat never really says it, but like, I like, if that was the case, like, I probably like, work to remove somebody's work from my book also. Like, that's, I don't know, like that's kind of like, there's a gentlemanly agreement when you're working in business and stuff and you're working together. Like, sure, you can kind of like build off of each other's ideas, but like when you go and like find the sources for all of this stuff and like go back and like do that, like that's kind of a low blow. That's one thing that I definitely would agree with. But again, like Pat really doesn't explain like exactly why he removed those reviews. Like, he kind of bounces around with it. Like, he keeps saying that it was because of his relationship with Tommy, and it's like, okay, but like the book 3.0 book came out in 2019, I think, and Brett's coverage, like Brett's first like actual like video on the Amico didn't happen until 2020. And unless like Brett deleted some other videos, but like even then, like Brett kind of made like some blog posts or something like that. Like, I didn't really go like too far back because like it's just exhausting, but it just really seems that the reason for these reviews being like removed were just like essentially just a falling out between Pat and Brett. And like, that's, like I said, it's Pat's book. Like, his name is on it. He's the editor of the book. He worked through it, and he paid Brett the money to do that. And like, it makes sense from that perspective. But again, like, this isn't like a final thing. That's just me speculating. But the one thing though is that like, he made this comment. The one thing that I don't agree with is Pat made this comment that Brett should have called, because Brett made this thing. He's like, well, I reached out and he blocked me on Facebook, and he blocked me on Twitter, and I sent him a text and he never responded. And Pat's like, well, you could have called. Like, and it's like, that's one thing that I really disagree with. It's one thing that I've been thinking about for a bit. Pat's like, well, he could have called, and it's like, I guess, but like, also you really made it kind of clear that you didn't want to talk to him. Like, you didn't want to talk to Brett. You blocked him. You didn't respond to his text. Like, if that was me, I'd be like, well, he doesn't want to talk to me. I'm not calling him. Like, why do, like, I'll respect your space. Like, if you're, and especially if you're going on your podcast and like, making backhanded comments about me, like kind of alluding to this issue, like saying that I don't, you're doing all this stuff. It's like, you kind of have to expect that somebody's not going to call you after that. Like, if you put up all these like barriers and stuff, that you make it kind of clear that you don't want to speak to somebody, and they don't reach out to you, then that's the end of it. Like, it's like, I understand, like, he's got, hurt feelings about, these issues and stuff, but it's like, you gotta communicate with him and stuff. You can't, like, which makes me believe that like this reputation, like this whole thing, like wasn't salvageable from the first place. Like, and he's acting like that. Oh, if Brett would have called, like this whole thing would have been avoided. Like, I don't think so, man. Like, I don't really think that Pat had any intention of smoothing things over with Brett. Like, again, like if you really wanted to like mend the relationship, when Brett texted you, you could have been just like, hey man, do you got time for a call? And Brett would have been like, yeah, sure, and then you would just call him, like I that's what I don't get. Like like you're asking for for Brett to move mountains to like communicate with you, and it's I don't know, it's just like a business relationship too. It's not like you guys are best buds. Like you didn't grow up in high school, thing, and you were best buds all the way through college, and now the relationship is soured because of this book and stuff. Like, then yeah, like sure, fine, you can say like, well, you didn't call me, but you guys are just like business partners for the most part. Like, not even like you got Brett, you paid Brett to write these reviews, and then we still don't really know what the issue is with like the exact reason why. There's a whole multitude of reasons, but it's like if somebody pulls that on me, like I'm not calling you, dude. Like, sorry. Like, that's I've been blocked by people, and or like somebody unfollows me or something like that. Like, I don't take it personally. It's just like, hey, that person doesn't want to follow me anymore. The person blocked me. That's perfectly fine. I'm not gonna be like sending him an email or something like that. But you're like, why'd you block me? Like, or go onto his YouTube channel or something like that and comment like, oh, can you just like unblock me? I need to. No, man. Like, you sent a clear indication that you don't want to talk to me anymore. So I respect your decision. Have a good one. Like what's gonna happen too? Like if Brett actually did call and like he didn't. Pat didn't pick up or something like that. Like, what would you have done then? Like, I find it really hard to believe that Pat really wanted to like repair the relationship between Brett and Pat. Like, I really don't think that that's the case. So, just it's just kind of a weird scenario that that was created specifically just to be like the whole onus like falls onto Brett to like mend these bridges and stuff. It's like, I don't know, man. Like, it's not worth it. Like, I don't know. Like, it's something that like I've encountered all the time. Like, some people, like, they just like they disappear, they fall off the face of the earth and stuff, and they don't want to talk to me. And like I can't speak to somebody who doesn't want to talk to me. Like, I'll reach out as much as possible, but like I don't know, it's kind of bizarre to me that like everybody's like being like, yeah, Brett should have called. It's like, would you have called? Like, really? Like, I don't know. Like, it's a thing. It's like, if Brett called and like Pat didn't answer and stuff, like it would have been like, well, Brett should have confronted me at a convention then, or Brett should have come to my house and held up a boom box, like say anything, to get Pat to notice, get me to notice him again. It's like, I don't play that hard to get stuff. Like, you clearly didn't want to talk to him. You don't get a phone call. Sorry. Like, that's just my opinion on it. Like, I've been thinking about that for a bit. Like, I'm like, why would it just hinge on a phone call? Like, why is it Brett's responsibility, like, to, after being blocked on Twitter, being ignored by texts, and like being kind of like cold shoulder at conventions and stuff? Like, why would I think that Brett would or Pat would want a phone call? Like, I don't know. That's just my thing. Like, I don't understand like why people are hounding Brett for not calling. It's like, hindsight, sure, yeah, sure. I guess like I could have called. Like, you know, but I don't know. Like I've run into like people who've done that to me. Like it's like, oh, this whole thing would have been avoided if you did this thing that I gave every indication that you shouldn't do. Oh, it's like, oh, great, I could have solved it. Like all this, snide comments on podcasts for the past 5 years, all that could have been avoided if I just like picked up the phone after you ignored my text. Oh yeah, sure, it's my bad. Like whatever, man. Like Pat can stay mad for all he wants and stuff like that. Like it's his right to be mad. Like I'm not invalidating that, but like to say that like this whole thing could have been avoided if Brett would have called. Like come on now. Like I've ignored friends and like I've kind of stopped being friends with them and like I don't expect them to call me. Like if I want to talk to them again, like I will make the outreach. Like that's ultimately the thing. Like you can't just be shocked when that other person just doesn't reach out. But that's my rant on it. But this whole thing, like it gives advice to somebody who, if you're gonna respond to these big creators with a positive audience and a fan base and stuff, you better not miss. I think Brett's rebuttal was okay, but it was just so verbose and it went on like a whole bunch of things like, oh, I ran into Pat and like I told Ian that he had a cool jacket on and stuff. It's like that's not really relevant to the thing at hand. Like keep it short and sweet. Like be like, hey, Pat said that my reviews, like that I didn't play the games to the reviews. That's not true. Like here is the email saying that, like, giving me notes on the feedback from Pat. Like the reviews were clearly good enough to go into the thing. So because like Pat's rebuttal doesn't really address any of that. It's just like it just goes on to be like Brett's a creep. Like just Brett's kind of a weirdo and like all these other things. Like wouldn't you be upset? Like it's like it doesn't address the real reason why the reviews were removed. It just goes to show you that like Pat just doesn't like Brett. But let me know what you guys think and make sure that you be civil here, because I know this is kind of like a hot topic. Like depending on whether or not you're a fan of Pat or you don't like Pat, like it's a totally different thing. Like the last video that I talked about, like we kind of went back and forth and thing. The other thing too that I want to mention is that email that Brett got about like where Pat was like, well, I guess you're not going to write for my Super Nintendo book. Like that's not a smoking gun. That's an uninvitation. Like that's kind of like an old like I grew up Catholic, with part of my family being like Italian and stuff, and like that kind of like passive aggressive, like, oh, I guess you're not coming then. Like that's kind of like a thing to be like, hey, you're not invited. Pretty much like you that's ultimately the thing. So for Brett to say like, oh, that's an invite, no, it's not. Like it's hey, I'm not gonna ask you to do my Super Nintendo book. This is why. Like, so just in case there was any confusion. But then again, like Pat should be really direct. Like be like, hey, I see you're doing a Super Nintendo book. Professionally, I can't have you work on my other one. Like it was, your business is no longer needed or something like that. Just kind of thing. Like not everybody can pick up on that. Like I picked up on it just fine, but like Brett's culture might be a different way where people are a little bit more direct, and if they're vague and stuff like that, maybe he might not pick up on that. But all right, that is all that I'm gonna say about that. Let me know again in the comments what you guys think about all this stuff. I don't think that I'm gonna make another video on the Pat and Brett controversy here, because I think that it's pretty much done. But other than that, if you guys got topics that you guys want me to cover, feel free. Next week I got one that we didn't have time for. I kind of want to go over whether or not I would do YouTube full time and kind of go over that. Like there's some little things that I want to talk about that. So that's one topic, and then I'll add more as the week goes on. But if you like the video please. And if you're new here and you like what you see and hear, go ahead and give the thing a subscribe. But also, I'm going to be putting these podcasts on to Spotify. That's coming soon. I had to redo my Anchor account because it was originally set up with the Steve Downs interview. So I haven't really gotten around to making a different thing, but it's coming soon. If you guys just listen to this in the background, which I know a lot of you do. So again, thanks for watching and listening, and I'll see you next episode.